Hey guys, welcome to the Beyond Sunday podcast. This is a space where we take this conversation beyond Sunday. Before we jump into today's conversation, how are you doing this morning, Devin?
I'm doing great. How are you with your NBA sweatshirt? Look at you with the throwbacks on there.
Yeah, don't be weird, but thanks.
I'm
Look at
not. I
you in your fancy white sweatshirt. Will it stay white all day?
well, there's the hope. There's the hope. I
Okay,
don't know, but
don't
I
need
think thankfully it's gonna be a warm day, so maybe it doesn't stay on all day. So that would be the
Oh,
joy.
okay. Before we get into the actual conversation, take a look at this video.
All right, welcome back to the conversation discussion. So this week, Shareo, what's the scripture and the big idea that we were in on Sunday?
Yeah, so we're walking through Luke as we are on this journey with Jesus, this journey of formation. And so this week, we were talking about leveraging the resources, God's resources for his kingdom. And so we're in Luke 16. I was in a couple places. I've been in Luke 14 for a few weeks in a row now,
Yeah.
kind of as a just as a jumping off point. But we were mostly in Luke 16 this week.
Yeah, what a fun chapter in Luke.
16.
Yeah.
Are you being sarcastic? We were only in the first part this week. The second part's coming.
Yeah,
Uh,
also a great part. And
yeah, but
cautionary tale.
don't talk about that now. That's for next week. Save it.
Well, it's all runs together. I mean, you can. You did it 2 weeks ago. Don't tell me I can't this
I
week.
did
That
do
seems
that. I did do that.
hypocritical,
But
but
I did it better than you're doing it. It's okay.
is that what you think
Um,
you're doing?
why don't you
Yes.
tell
Why
us?
don't I go into Luke 16? Because here in this parable, I have always every time I come across it, I'm struck by um the depth of truth that's in there and how confused I am in some of the things that still exist. So I thought today
Oh
I'd
no.
ask you some questions.
Oh,
As
I'm
an
gonna hate
expert,
this.
as an expert in the law, as Nicodemus's student, I thought that
I
would you
I
rather be
already don't
Gamaliel's,
like this.
Gamaliel's student?
I already don't love this.
You're like Paul's sister.
What's happening? Um,
I thought today I'd ask you some questions of some of the areas of Luke 16 in this parable of the disobedient manager, the shrewd manager, every other title that the Gospels give, and every version that gives this
the,
manager.
the New Living Translation calls him a rascal.
Rascal. Is that how you said
If
it?
I said it in a way, okay.
I'm sure.
Um,
With a tone, did you offer a tone?
don't hear tone. Um, but wait, these questions that you have for me, is this going to be like the thing that you do where you ask me questions about like
Like, do you know what a group of eagles
science
are called?
and his? Yeah, I do. A convocation. Did you
Look at
know
how your
that?
eyes lit up on that. You're like, I actually know this question.
Okay.
You're,
Stop.
you know what happens when you don't know the answer? You're like, you chill your head, you're like, don't be
I
dumb.
go, Devin.
It's a tell. It's a tell. If you're playing poker, you lose the hand.
Oh no, I think I'd be good at that.
Not with those, your eyes just lit up. You're like, I do
I
know.
know, but that's intentional. I can turn
Okay,
that off.
aside from groups of eagles, Luke 16 is the parable of the shrewd manager who is not great at his job, and the master comes and tells him, "You're going to lose your job, and so essentially get your affairs in order because you've not been good at this." So he then takes the clients of the manager and cancels or cancels some of their debts. Significant amounts are these debts, and he cancels some of them, reduces them, reduces the bill. And then in verse 8, the master says the master commended the dishonest manager because he had acted shrewdly. And then so this praise for the shrewdness, this uh, rascal behavior.
Okay. Yeah. Okay.
This commending the manager has always struck me as um,
Weird.
curious that I mean in today's time this person's losing their job and likely even going to court. You know what I mean? Like,
I know what you
um,
mean. Yeah. Yes, because I read this. Okay, so we read this on Sunday, and I'm like, if I hadn't have told you that this story was from the Bible, you may not believe that it
right?
was from the Bible
Yeah,
because
you're
it,
like, oh, did that happen at the business down the road?
yeah, right. Yes. So what's the question? Is there a question?
The commending the manager
Why?
for
Why he
acting
does that?
shrewdly, yeah,
Yeah.
for this
Mm.
cunning kind of behavior with it's not even it's the master's income, let's say it's the master's business that is he's leveraging for his
Yeah.
own good.
So I think the answer's found Jesus because Jesus talks about it in verse. Hold on.
9.
Yeah, here's a lesson. So Jesus made it very easy for us. Here's the lesson. Use your worldly resources to benefit others and make friends. Then when your possessions are gone, they will welcome you to an eternal home.
Okay, that part, the end of that part. What is that?
What is what?
That use worldly wealth to gain friends for yourself, so that when it is gone, you will be welcomed into eternal dwellings.
I think that what's being called out here is more of what has existed in 14 and in 15, chapter 14 and 15, where we're looking at Jesus is like, where are your priorities? And I think that's what we see here, right? So I think we both used in this teaching on Sunday, we both used what's called the five capitals, which is essentially this idea that there's different resources that we've been given or that we have. And I think what Jesus is calling out here and what we see in this story is make sure that you realize not all resources are created equal. So if we put these into different categories, right? If I have a certain amount of capital stored up in different areas, financial, intellectual, physical, relational, and spiritual, I think Jesus's call out here is like recognize that there is a different level of importance in all of these things. And that's what I read in that because at the beginning of this story, right? This guy's like, "Well, shoot, I'm going to lose my job." Like I just was told I'm going to lose my job. So never mind that he's a terrible employee and like if you would have just right, if you do what's right, you not be accepted. Never mind that piece. The point of this one is like he's like, "Shoot, I'm going to lose my job." So there goes my financial security, my financial capital, my tangible assets and resources. And so then he's like, "Well, what do I have?" And he even calls it out
Yeah,
in
I'm
again, the New Living Translation
not
is
strong
so
enough to dig.
it's so good in this one. I do not have the strength to dig ditches. He's like, "Yeah, don't sign me up for manual labor. That's ridiculous." So he's
Mm.
like, "I actually don't have physical capital.
I'm ashamed
And
to beg.
I'm ashamed to beg.
So
Don't
now
sign me up."
we don't we have too much intellectual capital to offer something less than that.
Right. So what does well, and so that's the thing. What does he have? He doesn't have financial capital. He's about to lose any that he does have. He doesn't have the physical capital, but he does have some intellectual capital. And so he's like, you know what? I have some ideas. I can be creative. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna recognize, even in that, he recognizes like, actually, what I need to do is build some relational capital because if I have relational capital, it actually won't matter. If I have enough of that, it won't matter that I'm going to lose my financial capital and that I don't have my physical capital because there's this hierarchy, this understanding of like, here's what's the most important. And so he does. He uses some of his intellectual like ideas, creativity to like, I know what I can do. I can make some friends and I'm going to make some friends. And he makes these friends and I think the point here is like, hey, cool. So when he gets fired, he's like, I'm actually fine because I got this friend who's going to let me stay on his couch and I got this friend who's going to feed me and like I'm good. Because imagine how that conversation goes, right? So these people, he's called them in. And he's like, oh, you owe 1,000 of something. Now you only owe 500. You owe 800. You only owe 400. And so these people are like, you're the greatest. And so then a week later, whatever, when he shows up and he's like, hey, I lost my job, they're like, oh, that's terrible. Like, you're so great. Why would you lose you should stay here. Like, I just imagine how that plays out. And so I think that's what Jesus is calling out. I think that's the thing. The rich man's like, well, dang, like that's actually pretty smart. Like, I mean, he still loses his job, right? Like, he's not.
And he's still a terrible manager and immoral person and
Yes,
unethical behavior.
the point is not follow this moral behavior, but I think the point is recognize that there's different, like that these things take a different place. And I think that's what Jesus calls out. Eternal home, like we're talking spiritual capital, which should always, always be the focus. If I ever have a chance, um, what I should be doing, if there's ever a question, I should be cashing in every other capital I have for that.
Yeah,
Right? That's the
which is being able to hear and discern the voice of God and respond to him. Right, that's
yeah.
the spiritual capital. But also too, looking at the commentaries of this idea for the where it says in second half of verse 8, for the people of this world are more shrewd in dealing with their own kind than are the people of the light. And it's that hustle, right? The pull yourself up by your bootstraps, the hustle of the game, right? And you just make it happen for yourself. And and that's I guess how I would read that part is like the people of the world are better at that than are the people of light because and even looking at the commentaries, the people of light actually their focus is not on making it happen for themselves, but trusting God's provision, trusting God's direction and the places that where it might seem like it's it's not going to happen or it's almost impossible that the people of the light trust in God that he'll make a way that the way of the kingdom in many ways to the way of the empire looks upside down and in some cases impossible that it could take place, but that is the nature of God's kingdom. And so even looking at some of those commentaries of like he's working in the way the world has operated, right? Hustle for the game, get yours, take care of you, which those who follow Jesus is ought not to be in following Jesus, not ought to be their focus or priority, but like you said, the spiritual capital or hearing and the voice of God and listening and obeying that voice versus just trying to take care of yourself, which not only lands in a few capitals, right?
Yeah. Uh, okay, but I would push back a little bit on that. Not so yes, I agree with all of that. But I do also wonder if some of what's being said, and maybe this is uh I mean, I didn't read like whatever commentaries you're talking about, but some of what's being said here, so yes, children of the light, there is a difference between the like, I'm gonna take care of me and mine. Um, but I think in verse 8, Jesus is calling out like there's also some level where we're being called to like to not just be passive existers in the kingdom, right? So I think it make when you were first talking about that, I was thinking about Marty and how he always describes Jacob and this like there's this like thing, right? Um
Chutzpah.
this chutzpah that I don't know, when I read verse 8, it's like in this, I don't necessarily see Jesus condemning the actions of the shrewd manager. Now, I think we can take all of the teachings of Jesus and scripture, and we can certainly say, like, yes, this was not ethical. He was not uh, acting in a way that stands in line with the way we saw Jesus act. But I don't see him calling out in this example that's a story, it's a parable in the example that Jesus is using, I don't see him saying, don't be like the shrewd manager. He says very clearly, use your worldly resources And yes, he calls out to benefit others, but and to make friends, which is what this guy did. Hey, you owe a big debt. Now you don't. Now you only owe part of it. So I'm benefiting others. It's not just me, it's also you. And I say that not because I don't think, not because I don't agree with what you just said. Yes, absolutely. The mentality, especially it's rampant in our world today. This like I take care of me and mine, individualism, whatever. Like certainly that stands in contrast to the kingdom. But I also think that sometimes we can get caught up in this like passivity, and I don't mean politically. I mean like okay, God, I'm just gonna trust you in this meekness and like I'm just gonna sit here and like do what I'm just gonna wait and bide my time. And in some regards in this, I see this like so what landed for me and why we were back in Luke 14 for even just a minute on Sunday is because Luke 14 was like count the cost. Figure out, you need to recognize what it's gonna cost you to follow me.
Yeah.
In this, it's like count your resources, pay attention to what you've been given, be wise in the way that you're using them, and not just using them like, okay, I'm giving it all away, but like, am I being wise in what I'm choosing to cash in? So we even called out some of that. Like, what's it look like to where are the places that I've said, actually, I value my physical capital, which can be our health and whatever, but it's also our time and our minutes. So I value my time and my minutes, and I want to hoard up or I want to hold up my physical capital at the expense of spiritual capital. I could cash this in and I could spend time with Jesus. I could be intentional to listen to the voice of God. I could surround myself with community who's going to point me towards God. But I've actually decided physical capital is really important to me, so I'm going to hold on to that. That stands in contrast to the understanding of what we see in the shrewd manager, right? Or the same thing. I'm going to do anything I can to keep my job, to keep financial stability, to hold on to that capital, even at the expense of building relationship and community around me, or spiritual capital again, like any of those things. And so I don't know. I guess I also think that there's in this feels like a call to action to me. It's like you better like, yes, be shrewd in the way you use these resources because otherwise they're sitting there and what is like, I don't know. I just think the enemy is like, hey, cool, if I could just get you to not use those, that'd be great. Or if I could get you to prioritize these in the wrong
Yeah.
way, that'd be great.
Well,
And so I do see
yeah.
something in the call out of like, be shrewd. You like be shrewd in the way that the end game is greater spiritual capital, eternal home, relationship with others, benefits others. So I don't know.
Well, it's the leveraging these resources and understanding like are these my resources? Do I see myself as an owner of these resources or a manager, right? So even in the beginning of this parable, the master brings the manager in because he's heard account that the manager is wasting. It says wasting his possessions, the master's possessions. He's been accused of that. And so the master calls him in. He goes, give account.
Yeah.
And then quickly it's like give account because you cannot be a manager any longer. So you've wasted them. You've not managed well. You've not stewarded well. You've wasted them. And then it's funny that the accusation of wasting the master's resources or possessions then the master or the manager winds up canceling some debts. It's
Yeah.
like um in one regard, maybe in worldly terms of the empire, you one might say that's wasteful as well. But maybe in the kingdom mindset, and what maybe Jesus is calling out is he is using the master's possessions um, and accounts to, as even Jesus is called out, to make friends and leverage what the master has and what he has access to for a little while to leverage that so that he can have friends that it says he'll welcome them into his their houses. That it's that piece of in one context is like that seems wasteful again, but he's now using it so that he has a friend. Before it was just like maybe for me and for mine, I don't really care what this does or doesn't do. But he's very, very intentional that now he's canceling debts so that he can make a friend.
Right. Right.
But it's
Yeah,
that piece. It's that piece of owning or managing, owning or stewarding.
right,
Do I own these things that exist in my life, or am I a steward of them? And are they God's resources,
right.
God's provision? And I'm not even just talking about assets and possessions. I mean, all of our capital,
Yep.
spiritual, physical, intellectual, relational, and financial, and many others that exist in our life. Do I see myself as an owner of these things or as a steward, stewarding well what God has provided? That still sits with me as the question ongoing, every day after even studying through Luke 16 of how do I see myself in those resources that exist in my life, those capitals that exist in my life?
Right. Yeah, and that so we spent like a brief little bit of time in Psalm 24 because of that very thing, which says the earth is the Lord's and everything in it. Like the and it calls out even the people. Everything is the Lord's. So let us not forget in all of this conversation as we're counting resources, because also sometimes what's going to happen is I'm gonna like, okay, what do I have? What are the resources that I have at my disposal? And I'm going to come up short sometimes. There's going to be times where I feel, or at least I feel like I've come up short. Like I don't actually have enough. I don't have enough of whatever the capital might be in this situation. And sometimes to me that maybe that's coming from a selfish or a greedy place, but sometimes also there's just the truth of like I actually don't know that I have enough right now.
Mm,
And in those moments, do I remember and trust that like the earth is the Lord's and so are all of us, and
yeah.
He will not fail. He has not, He will not. Like He will take care. And that even that is evidence of a spiritual capital that says, I hear you, God. I trust you, God. I'm going to obey you. I'm going to act in a way that says I trust your provision and your goodness. And
Hmm.
um, yeah, it's all His anyways.
Yeah. Well, and also where it lands there at the end of 16, which I was like, there is great truth here at the end. But before and oftentimes we can read through 16 and we're like, I don't really know why we're commending this guy. He's like he's a rascal, and why would we offer anything but harsh condemnation to this behavior? And then it lands to this, whoever is trusted with very little also whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much, and whoever is dishonest with little is dishonest with much, which calls me back to Luke 12. And when the master gives these talents to three and what they do with them, and calling out again, it's part of that stewarding. How are you stewarding what the master is giving?
Right. Yeah. And that goes back to, which we've had this conversation on here before, I think, but that goes back to, well, so it's priority again. How are you stewarding what the master's given? Do you recognize like what should always come first? But that also goes back to, do you understand who the master is? And do you understand the character and the nature of the master, of this good God who is going to provide? He has never not
Yeah.
provided. He hasn't failed. He won't fail you. Do you understand that?
Mhm.
Because if you do, then the way that you operate in the world, the shrewdness or the whatever words we want to use, that lines up differently if I understand who the master is.
Yeah, because in Luke 12, it's a misrepresentation or a lack of understanding. You see God as this way.
Yeah, I know you to be a hard master, or however that's worded.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, but what you missed is my compassion, my grace, my provision.
Also, my invitation to invest what I've given you. This isn't yours, and
Mhm.
I've asked you I've given it to you to leverage
Right,
for the kingdom work.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that's also too where it lands there. Before we get into what next week holds in the next part of 16 is there in 15 as you in talking to the Pharisees, you are the
Mhm.
ones who justify yourselves in the eyes of men, but God knows your heart. What is highly valued among men is detestable in God's sight. And that is quite a contrast. What is valued among men, highly valued among men, is detestable
Right.
in God's sight. So
Yeah.
what, and that goes into this cautionary parable that's coming next. Woe is me if
Yeah.
I am looking at things that's highly valued among men. Is that highly valued among God or in God's sight?
And do I care? Do I even care enough to pause and ask that question?
Yeah. Well, as we wrap this episode up, Shreya, what would you say is the kairos for you of what is God saying to you and how you are invited to respond?
Um, yeah, after church on Sunday, a gal came up and was asking questions about the text and the message, and which was cool. We got to have a cool conversation because she was just trying to figure out. She'd not heard this story. She hadn't heard the idea or the concept of the capitals before. And so one of the things that she was asking was like, okay, so are these all supposed to be balanced? Like, should I always have, is my goal, like
Yeah.
ideally to for these to be balanced? And so that opened a good conversation of like, I've never seen that in my life. I've never seen a space or a season where I'm like, I have exactly the same amount of capital in every space. It's all full. This is all so great, right? And so it opened up the conversation, and it's more of what we're just talking about, but maybe it just gave a different perspective of it, of like the goal. What's the goal? What's the goal? What's the end? If we've done the gold bar exercise, and I gave that to our people, even where you're essentially taking like you have this many bars. If you could place them wherever you want, where would you put them? And I always think it's funny every time we do that. Every time that I've done that or that I've taught that, it's such a funny thing to watch people because they're like, well, should I give them all to the spiritual one? It seems like that's like, what's the God answer here?
Yeah.
And so we were able to have a conversation of, just kind of wrestling through that. And so then for me, I think the thing that lands is like, it goes back to the priority. Where's my priority? Spiritual, my spiritual, my relationship with God, the way that I'm listening and hearing, that should always be first. But also at any given time and probably on a regular basis, am I paying attention to what I do have? Or am I more focused on what I don't have, on the areas that I'm lacking? Because I think that's the other thing, like part of in 10, yeah, 10 and 10, 11, 12, all through there, where it's like being faithful in little things. I can't actually be faithful if I don't know what I have. And so this
Mhm.
idea of recognizing, like, am I paying attention to the resources God has given me in any given time or season? Not that they're ever going to be fully balanced, or not that I'll probably ever feel like, gosh, I have you know, no needs, no wants, whatever. That's a different thing. But am I paying attention to know like I actually can't leverage these things if I don't know what I have? And so am I regularly, yeah, just taking inventory of like, what do I have? And where are you asking me, God, to invest some of one of these things for something that's better, that looks more like you, that looks more like kingdom? And I think that's actually that's where we're headed, I think, this coming week.
Yeah.
Because if this last week's question was like, how count the cost, count the resources, excuse me. If this last week's question was count the resources, what do you have? This coming week is like, what are you going to do with it? How are you going to utilize it? And so I think before we can get there, for me this week is like, do you even know what you have?
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah, and for me, along those lines of reflection and assessing that this piece of in verse 11. So if you've not been trustworthy in handling worldly wealth, who will trust you with true riches, right? And I would take that true riches as like these are kingdom riches. These are eternal things, right? So you don't store up for your treasures on earth, right? But treasures in heaven, right? These are eternal treasures, um, and in that statement, because is this idea of the what kind of mindset do I have, right? If I'm an owner or a manager, an owner of these things or a steward of these resources God has provided, these capitals, um, am I stewarding well? Whether they are worldly riches, things that exist in this world here and now in the temporal, here on earth, am I stewarding these things well?
Right.
And then, does um, if I am, and that's part of the reflection piece, if I am, then might God bless with even something more precious, right? With an eternal treasure.
Hmm.
And that's the piece of that, like you mentioned, the reflection. It's also a kairos for me of, um, yeah, in these tangible assets, whatever they happen to be, or things that exist here on earth, whether it's relationships or ideas and concepts that God's given me. Am I stewarding them well,
Yeah.
or in these spaces have I thought that I owned them and didn't use them wisely, or
Right.
didn't use them to leverage for the kingdom good, for what God is calling and inviting me into. So that's the kairos, is along with the reflection, but also the mindset, which we are headed into in this coming week. But if I believe that God is a God of abundance, not of scarcity, then it matters how I think about these things,
Right.
about these resources and about these capitals. And I'm just probably like anyone else, where I can get pulled into a mindset that says, "Uh-oh, they're not going to be enough if I don't hold on to it, or if I don't make sure that I have it, then I won't be there if I don't take it for myself." And I can be pulled into that. And but God's a God of abundance, so trusting Him and the things He provides when He provides them.
Yeah. It's good.
You know. Well, guys, thanks for being with us on this episode, and we hope and pray that your conversations are going beyond Sunday, and that you're hearing from God and responding to Him. We pray that your conversations with one another in God's Word is inviting you into a transformative kind of work that God is desiring to do in and through you. So have a blessed week.